Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jiles, and this is another episode of Tech Talk. Joining us today is the one and the only, and I'm super excited because this is a gentleman and a brand that I've wanted to have on the show for a while, Bert Van Dale. Bert, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm,
Glad to
I'm,
be
you
here.
know, I'm living the life, man. I've got Auro on the show. I've got the Bert. It's gonna be cool, and we're gonna talk about so many fun things related to home theater and hi-fi. Really exciting. Let's
Yeah,
start out with the foundation for everyone, though. So, for folks that don't know who you are and maybe don't know a lot about the company, could you give us, like the 2 minute primer on who you are, what your role is with the company, and then a little bit about what the company does?
yeah, sure. So let's start with who I am. So I'm Bert van Dalen. I'm the CTO of Auro 3D, or let's say the companies that create Auro 3D. I actually started out as the first employee of the company 13 years ago.
Wow.
So I was there from day one when creating and rolling out the format and all the technology there. And so the company was actually created in 2011, let's say 2010, 11, um, where Auro 3D was introduced in the market, first in cinema and later on in the home cinema and other industries. Um, and so, yeah, we've been doing this for a while now. So the creation of Auro 3D is where we started. We have this format, which we will maybe talk a little bit more about later on. And we were the first to introduce, let's say, immersive sound, or at that time it was sometimes called surround with height, into the market.
Right.
Where, for instance, the first movie was Red Tails from George Lucas. And that kind of stirred up the market at that time, which was completely built on surround sound, 7.1, 5.1. And yeah, at that time, everyone was like, what is this? What is this Auro 3D thing? What is immersive sound? And so, yeah, we're really proud that we actually changed the audio world quite dramatically, even though we're still very small today. We have been, I think, doing a lot of pioneering work in this area. And so in the last 13 years, yeah, we have been introducing our technologies like the Auro Codec, which was the original codec that we used to, introduce Auro 3D content in the market on Blu-ray, but also for downloads and so on. We have our aromatic upmixing technology, which is still one of the best, I believe, one of the best immersive upmixers on the market. So to create stereo and surround signals and convert them into an Auro 3D experience. But we have not sat still in all those years. So we have introduced this in the home cinema market, in the home theaters. But in the last years, we have been really focusing on introducing this in a lot more markets. We have binaural technology to bring it in mobile devices called Auro headphones. We have built in the last years virtual speaker technology to also reproduce this on sound bars, smart speakers, or smaller audio systems like stereo speakers. We have built a new streaming codec, which we have announced last year, but are really getting traction on at CES this year, called Auro CX, which definitely will be a topic further in this call. And yeah, lots of other technologies to basically create a complete ecosystem for the Auro 3D format and the Auro 3D content. So that's what we've been doing as Auro, first Auro Technologies, now new Auro.
Awesome. So I want to dig into one of those last things that you mentioned there. And then we'll get to Auro 3D in a bit, right? I know a lot of people want to hear more about that, but I'm really interested in the Auro CX. And that was that announced at CES this year, or was it first displayed there? And can you dig in a little bit into how that works and what it is?
Sure. So actually, the first announcement of Auro CX as the new streaming codec for Auro 3D was in CS 23, so last year basically. But this was kind of the first introduction to a smaller audience where let's say people we already work with were got demonstrations of the codec. And in the meantime, we had a lot of corporations built on this. And actually at CES this year, we have been a full introduction with integrations in various applications, like, for instance, mobile applications and other streaming platforms. So basically what Auro CX is the following. I already mentioned the Auro Codec as the original codec where we used to introduce Auro 3D in the market. And this original codec was a very breakthrough technology where we could actually take for instance, a 9.1 signal, 5.1.4 as many people know it. We can actually encode the height mix the height and the lower layers into a 5.1 or 7.1 surround signal in the PCM domain. So in uncompressed audio.
Right.
Meaning, and we added actually the metadata, the digital signals, to inform a decoder how to unmix this again to the original Auro 3D signals. We embedded that signal into the lower bits of the PCM signal. And that had the advantage that we could introduce this as uncompressed PCM on Blu-rays. We could transmit this over HDMI, which already supports PCM, and basically even play back these signals on systems that don't have a decoder. So if you have a standard 5.1 or 7.1 surrounds receiver without Auro 3D, it would still play back a perfectly fine 5.1 or 7.1 signal. But if you do have a decoder, it will bring it back to whatever the original Auro 3D signal was. Now that's a very powerful system that has helped us very well over the past 13 years and still is. We have very interesting applications that are still ongoing now. But it also has a little bit of downsides for, let's say, the streaming area, where in the meantime we have transitioned into as an industry. To give you the short highlights, 5.1 PCM at 48 kilohertz is basically 6 megabits per second. And yes, you can use, for instance, a lossless codec to further compress that a little bit. Like, for instance, it happens on Blu-ray. Most of the Auro 3D signals are encoded with DTH HDMA. Or in streaming, we actually also combine it with FLAC to lossless encode it. But you still end up with 3 megabits per second for 48 kilohertz. Or higher if you have 96 kilohertz, because this was also one of the very big strengths of Auro 3D from the beginning. We have always supported high resolution audio for immersive sound, 96 kilohertz, 24-bit as well. But it's still high bitrate. You still have 6 to 8 megabits per second for these high resolution signals, even when you have compressed them with a lossless codec. That's one issue or challenge, so to speak. Another problem with this technology is it's not expandable anymore. So we have basically used it to its full potential. But if we want to add new features, that was not possible anymore. For instance, object-based audio, which has become the big hype in this whole immersive audio space, could not be added in this system. Or interactive audio, which we actually believe is a very strong offering you can do with object-based audio. You cannot do this with this kind of codec. So we went to the drawing board a couple of years ago and started to build our own streaming solution called Auro CX, where we really wanted to offer a real next generation audio codec, as it's called. So a next generation audio codec, according to some definitions in the industry, needs to have a couple of features, meaning it needs to be built for streaming applications, so the over-the-top applications or the standard broadcast way of working with what's now in ATSC 3.0, for instance. Secondly, it needs to support immersive sound. Obviously, as Auro 3D, this is a feature we have to have. Personalization or interactive audio is also a typical feature of an NGA codec. And then you also have features related to signaling and loudness management, all these kind of features. These definitions are not unique to Auro. There's other offerings in the market that also fulfill these requirements. Now, Auro CX also has these features. So it is built for streaming. It supports Auro 3D immersive sound, even much bigger configurations than we had. It now also supports full object-based audio with objects being rendered to 3D, which means we can go much further than, for instance, the 13.1 that we had up till now. And this object-based audio also gives us the opportunity to introduce personalization features, like, for instance, dialogue enhancement, multiple language support, additional commentary tracks. All these kinds of features are now possible with Auro CX as well. And the fact that we build it for streaming does not only has a couple of implications as far as bitrate is concerned. Of course, I already mentioned that our codec is in the range of 3 to 8 megabits per second, depending on how you use it. With the CX codec, we actually build in 3 encoding modes. Like, let's say, the most competitive offerings, we also have built in low bitrate, lossy encoding modes, where we can do, for instance, a full Auro 3D 9.1 audio at bitrates as low as 256 kilobits per second at very high quality, basically transparent audio, which is much lower than some competitors need for the same quality.
Sure.
So we can do that up to, including objects and so on. We can go in the range of, let's say, up to 1 megabit per second for full featured, you name it, any feature that you want. But we also built in a transparent mode, or near lossless mode, as we call it. And this is using the same, or at least the same kind of technology as what we used in the original Auro codec, but optimized for streaming. And that allows us to bring the exact same quality, the exact same experience as what we had on Blu-ray at bit rates around 1.5 to 2 megabits per second. And again, also with high resolution at 96 kilohertz. But we were not happy with that either. We also built in lossless audio coding. So this is the only streaming codec that can support lossy, transparent, and lossless audio up to 192 kilohertz for immersive sound and object-based audio. So that is already a big thing for Auro CX for us.
That's huge.
With a single codec, with a single decoder, we can support a whole range of bit rates and different qualities, but all for immersive sound and even object-based audio. We didn't stop there.
Okay, wow.
And I will stop after this first section, I would say. We also made it adaptive, meaning in this day and age of streaming technologies, in video, everybody knows adaptive bitrate technologies where you have different resolutions of the picture, and the decoder can basically select the different encoding quality dynamically depending on the bandwidth that is available. Well, this is also possible with Auro CX for audio, where a decoder can switch seamlessly without any click or plop between different encoding qualities at different bit rates of the same content. And this has been very welcomed, let's say, at our demonstrations at CES, where a lot of people see a lot of opportunities for streaming services to be, basically to avoid the buffering wheel in case, for instance, in an automotive application, you drive through a tunnel and your bandwidth goes down. You don't have buffering. And if your bandwidth goes up again, you could go back to the lossless version, high quality, without any issue and interruption.
Yeah, so just a few comments here. So it seems like one of the direct applications of this for I think a number of the people that watch this, right? Because people, we always have the conversation around streaming versus physical media versus, whatever. And audio is always the big challenge, right? They're like, oh, picture's pretty good, but man, the difference in audio is so significant that streaming is just not a viable substitute for a lot of people. It sounds
Yeah.
like this is a step pretty far down the road to creating an environment where streamed audio is close to or on par with what you would get off of physical media. Is that a correct statement?
I would say with Auro CX in the case, yeah, I would say with Auro CX, we can even go further than with what's currently possible on physical media as far as audio is concerned.
Wow.
Basically, the main limitation will be your broadband connection. To give you an example, Blu-ray has an audio bandwidth of about, 15 to 20 megabits per second. Well, to be frank, if you want, I don't know, 22.2, the Japanese standard at
Right.
192 kilohertz lossless, that will not fit.
Right.
If you have a broadband connection where you can have 100 megabits per second, for instance, and you have a stable connection, potentially CX would be able to deliver this seamlessly and losslessly without issues. Now, we have foreseen not only with this adaptive bitrate situations where the fluctuation in bandwidth or whatever could also be, how's it called in English? Basically adapted to the situation. But we also have foreseen what we call scalability features that even make it more flexible, especially for the streaming services, to not only bring this better experience, but also to reduce the cost. We do this in two ways. Basically, we have added what we call scalable channel coding, where, for instance, a single bit stream, a single encode of let's say a 13.1 mix, an Auro 13.1 mix, has 14 channels. But you can imagine that you have several kinds of decoders in the market. And the lowest quality decoder, what we call a low complexity decoder, is a decoder that we aim for, let's say, mobile devices, maybe TVs or other devices that don't need a decoder that can handle, rendering to 32 speakers or 192 kilohertz rendering, because simply the hardware cannot support it, and the CPU load would be way too high. So we made it in such a way that even if you send such a bit stream, such an encode to a device that cannot handle more than 2 channels, it will just decode 2 channels, but you will get the full experience. You will get the full mix. So not just full decode and down mix, but it will immediately have the full mix with only decoding 2 channels. And so that means low CPU, low bitrate, even if the original signal was really big. And this we can scale. So we have different levels of decoders going from these 2 channels to really crazy setups. And we also did that for the sample rates. So if you have a 192 kilohertz stream, this cheaper decoder can perfectly decode a 48 kilohertz version out of the same bit stream without needing to fully decode the whole thing, but just decode a 48 kilohertz version. And it's not a separate version, it's really part of the system to make this scalable. And so the more powerful the decoder, the bigger, the more extensive the experience can be from a single file, from a single encode. So that means for the streaming service, you have less versions to create, less versions to encode, less versions to store, and also less versions to distribute. So that's a cost reduction feature. But at the same time, it is the opportunity for the audience like yourselves to get at all times the best possible experience, whatever your device can handle.
Right. And that I've talked to some different streaming services, and one of the items that they brought to the forefront was that exact issue, which is, they have to do so much work and provide so much storage and have so many different versions of audio tracks that it, becomes an onerous task for them to deal with it. So this, I think, is a great solution, not only from the consumer's point of view, right? Because you get access to better audio over the connection that you have when you're streaming, but then for the streamer, they also get a benefit. So it's really nice when you're able to align goals for both the consumer and the producer, so to speak, at the same time with one tool, right? It's an easy decision to say, let's get on the bus. And
That's
so
exactly
that's
it.
the question. Are people
That's the
going to
whole.
get on the bus?
Are the people going to take the bus? That's a good question. So it's early days. For us, it's early days, let's say, and there's two things here. So the reactions we got now at CES are extremely well, and we do have already corporations where people are getting on the bus. I'll come back to that later.
Right.
So we are late in the game, and that's what I wanted to say first. We are late in the game, so our bus comes a little bit later. That's true, but we have, as you have heard, been looking around at what are the challenges that people have with immersive sound and streaming and so on, and which are not answered by the offerings that are already in the market or are also coming to the market soon. We have answers for that. Now, are people getting on the bus? The answer is yes. We already have for more than a year now a cooperation with a streaming service called Artist Connection. Artist Connection is a what they call white label streaming service where musicians, studios, labels actually can create their own space. It's called a studio, and upload their own content on that streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
And since more than a year, they actually can do this also in Auro 3D. And Artist Connection has apps on mobile phones for iOS and Android that can stream this content, and with Auro 3D immediately also either played back as stereo, but also in a binaural version for headphones, in real time generated on the phone, or if you listen to your phone in landscape, you could even have a virtual 3D sound from your phone. So very interesting if you have, for instance, a live concert with picture, which is one of the big features of Artist Connection as a live streaming service. You watch a concert on your phone and you hear it in 3D, either on your headphones or your speakers. We also have, or they also have, a Android TV application, which is validated, let's say, on NVIDIA Shield TV, where this already decodes on the Artist Connection app on Android TV, and then outputs on HDMI the Auro encoded signal as an Auro codec encoded signal. So even when it was received as Auro CX, it will be output on HDMI as Auro codec signal, which means it can be decoded by all the existing devices that support Auro 3D from day one.
That is really cool. I like that a lot. That's really nice.
And it works very nicely. It's very low latency. You don't see transcoding latency. You don't hear transcoding artifacts. Very important, of course. And that means that thanks to this cooperation with Artist Connection, we have mobile phones. We have immediately support on AVRs and soon also on soundbars. And we even have cooperations already on deeper integrations where, for instance, a feature also developed by Artist Connection called AC Connect can be used to, like Spotify Connect or Tidal Connect, but to directly stream Auro 3D content to devices that support this connection features, where then it's immediately decoded and potentially rendered virtualized on the device. There it doesn't end yet. So we also have, since a couple of months, support from Korg, the brand for synthesizers and so on. Korg already for many years has a streaming service called Live Extreme in Japan. It's basically an encoder system where concert organizers can install such a system during the concert and do a live stream in high resolution audio and high resolution video of the concert to their audience. Originally, this was only in Japan. But now they added Auro 3D, real-time Auro 3D, high-resolution encoding at 96 kilohertz in this system. And they have a cooperation also, again, with Artist Connection to actually play back these streams from Korg Live Extreme, which are live encoded with Auro 3D.
Wow. Very nice.
On all these devices. And so that kind of already has a big impact on the market for us because it's live, it's high resolution, it's on all kinds of devices. Or you can, as an artist, have your own content pre-encoded on this service. Other services will also work on this. I cannot disclose any names there yet, but this year we will definitely see at least one, maybe even two music streaming services bringing music in our 3D high resolution to the market. And the good news is that since it's music, it's probably easier to have worldwide access, so including the US, because that's one of the big challenges we had as Auro, and that was if it's Blu-ray or if it's movies, you have lots of regional issues that come up, which make it a lot more expensive to do releases. And that is one of the reasons why we had lots of trouble in the past to get our 3D versions of mixes out in the market. So yeah, we believe this streaming solution will help us a lot to break a lot of the challenges that we had in the past. And we're very hopeful for the next year to see lots more Auro 3D in the market.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, the streaming service sounds like exactly what the market needs today to help it take that next step down the path of streaming. And we all know that there's a large shift in the way that people consume content now to streaming, and this has been happening for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? So nothing new there. And I'm happy to see that you guys are building technology that helps make that experience better for people. Now, I think maybe it's the last big topic to talk about today before we close out is I want to talk a little bit about Auro 3D because, I've got a lot of people out on the 4K Blu-ray side, home theater side, and they're like, oh, what's going on with Auro 3D? Anything new to know about there? How's it going? How's content looking? How's the market? So any comments around that product and the home theater space where people really like to use that?
So yeah, one of the things we had with Auro 3D, so maybe to fully understand your question, you want me also to give a little bit of a primer on Auro 3D?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you could talk just a little bit about what it is, what it does, and then what the outlook is for that specific technology.
Clear. So Auro 3D, when we introduced it now 13 years ago, was the first immersive sound format. And basically, it started out as what we call Auro 9.1, which is a 3D audio system where you had a 5.1 surround lower layer or surround bases, enhanced with 4 height speakers above the corner speakers. And this is what we call the minimum configuration to reproduce real, natural, immersive sound. Because these 4 height speakers in Auro 3D are actually at an elevation of about 30 degrees, which is very different than the pure overhead speakers you have in other formats. Now, the reason for this 30 degrees elevation is very important, and it has all to do with how we hear sound in reality. A lot of tests and also afterwards tests done in various areas and papers in the AES, you name it, have proven that this 30 degrees elevation is actually ideal to reproduce natural reflections that also exist in reality. Why is it important? In reality, we hear day in, day out in 3D. Our ears, we do have two ears, but we hear 3 dimensions all the time.
Right.
And even when there is just one source, me speaking in this room, for instance, you still hear 3D audio because of these reflections in the room. And it has been proven that if you are too low to reproduce these reflections that you can capture with microphones or reproduce with reverbs or whatever, but if your speakers are too low compared to your ear level to reproduce the height reflections, it just drops to a surround experience like we were used to before immersive sound was there. If you go too far, let's say above 40 degrees, 45 degrees, you start to feel it as a separate layer. You start to lose a coherent sound field like it exists in reality. And that has all to do with how our hearing works, with how our ears perceive reflections and height signals. Of course, we do hear height above us as well, but imagine you're playing pool. It's a bit hard to imagine playing pool in the height, but basically any source that can come back immediately above you is not a reflection. It is not part of a natural room signal.
Right.
It must be a separate source, like an airplane or a bird, because if it would be a reflection, the only reflection that could be coming from there is what you produce yourself. And our brain figures that out because it says, yeah, it comes from above, it's a reflection, but basically it's no danger. So our hearing has been optimized for, let's say, sounds that come from not directly above us, because that's less dangerous, unless there is a discrete source like a bird, a plane, or a predator above us. Then yes, we need to hear it. But that is less, let's say, that's fun, that's cool to hear these sounds in 3D, but it's not what gives you a natural envelopment of sound. And that's what Auro 3D is really known for. It's if you have a recording and it's done according to what we feel is the best way to record and mix and so on in Auro 3D, it's all about being enveloped by the sound, by feeling like you're there, not by just having sounds coming from everywhere, but really like forgetting that you're listening to speakers, forgetting that you're listening to a recording, but feeling that you're in that room. And those height speakers at 30 degrees really help creating that experience. Now, in the course of years, we expanded that 9.1 configuration to more speakers indeed, for several reasons. Compatibility, not only with surround 7.1, for instance, but also with bigger rooms. For instance, we have this height center speaker above the screen as well. So we have the height left and height right, but also height center. That was really created for cinema applications, so that if you have a large screen, that this hole that you started to feel on larger screens and the movement on the screen was going on, you could really still fill that goal with a separate speaker. This is unique to Auro 3D. There's no other immersive sound format that actually has 6 speakers behind the screen in larger rooms. And then we, of course, also have the famous voice of God, or
voice of God.
But it is really, let's say, for larger rooms where we, so if the room becomes too big, this virtual closing of the height layer is really helped by having this speaker above you as well. But then we're talking bigger systems. And so that makes that we have 9, 10, 11, and 13.1, with 9.1, 714, or 11.1, 714, and 13.1 being the most used configurations for content creation. Of course, in the playback systems, we have support for many more configurations with, without, height speakers, you name it.
Right.
And then we take care of it either through down mixing or re-rendering or through virtualization with our scene technology. So, but that is Auro 3D. It is a format for recording, capturing real, natural, immersive sound in a very natural way, in a very easy way, also for content creators, and reproducing this in a natural way in the playback environment, whether it's a high-end home theater, or a car with our automotive solutions, or even mobile devices with our headphone rendering.
Right. So if a person wants to take advantage of Auro 3D and experience that, what are the things that they need to have in place to do that? And it would seem like, one, they need a piece of content, right, that is encoded with Auro 3D, potentially. And then on the other side, you need a device that's able to reproduce Auro 3D, correct? So how do those pieces work together?
So let's first start with the easy part. That's the devices. So currently we are in about 80% of the brands for AVRs. 80% of the AVR brands have Auro 3D support through what we call the Auro 3D engine.
Sure.
This engine that covers about 60% of all the AVR models, because currently we are still perceived to be a premium feature by many of these companies, which means we are not yet as much in the 5.1 or 7.1 models, but the brands are all supported, which is actually expanded now at CES with the support from Onkyo, Pioneer, Integra, and Elite. So we're very happy with that as well, so that there's still a growing support for Auro 3D. So an AVR is currently the device that you would need to have Auro 3D support. Soundbars are coming up this year as well. And we also have already some cars that also have Auro 3D support next to the apps on mobile. So there's different ways to experience. If we talk about home theater systems, currently it's AVRs. And again, basically most brands that you can think of have Auro 3D support. So there's no issue. Content-wise, yes, the best experience is, of course, with what we call native content. Native content being recorded and or mixed in an Auro 3D format and then encoded using Auro Codec on Blu-ray, on physical media, or in the near future streamed using Auro CX. But of course, from the beginning, we made sure this was not the only way you could experience Auro 3D. We developed our leading upmixer called Auromatic, which can take any stereo or surround signal and also turn that into a fantastic Auro 3D experience. In fact, a lot of people prefer the Auromatic upmixed version above some native immersive versions that are available on the market of the same content. So that means basically any stereo signal, any MP3, any CD, any Blu-ray with 5.1 DVD, you can still enjoy in Auro 3D on your system.
Awesome, that's great. And just one comment about the upmixer. It absolutely is my favorite way to listen to music in a multi-channel environment. Particularly if it's just 2-channel music. It is superb. And if people haven't tried it yet, they absolutely need to find a piece of equipment that will do that for them, because it's really, really good. I mean, it really adds a level of immersiveness to music that doesn't exist without it. Now, I'm sure there are some 2-channel purists out there right now going, oh my goodness, what are you talking about? But I think for the vast majority of us, it's a really engaging way to leverage our investment in home theater to experience music in what I think is better way. So I really like that.
I'm fully with you.
Right on. So the last topic before we close out today, anything coming down the line? I know that the CX piece is new, but you talked a little bit about soundbars and that kind of thing. Anything else you want to mention for the future of Auro products, devices, whatnot, that'll come?
So basically, for the coming year, our focus will indeed be first and foremost the introduction of CX in as many devices as possible, because this streaming solution is really needed to bring Auro 3D to the next level. But indeed, soundbars is the next focus as well. We are working with many companies. They are either evaluating or integrating our technology as we speak. So soundbars will come to the market as well in the course of this year. Actually, we developed this a couple of years ago, but basically COVID withheld us from demonstrating it the proper way, and we were able to do that in the past year with the positive results that that we can now actually hopefully really soon can announce some devices that will support it as well. So that's an expansion to a whole new range of devices for us, because yes, we really want to break this perception that Auro is only for these very expensive high-end
Right.
devices. No, the experience is too good for everybody needs to experience it. So soundbars critical. The further expansion of this streaming services with also our binaural rendering is of course also a very important part there. Hopefully you will also see other services pick this up soon. So that's the focus for the coming year at least. CX introduction to have the full streaming ecosystem combined with soundbars. And we also introduced at this CES a smart speaker technology, basically where you can have a single small device that also produces a bigger immersive like sound field, not only from native 3D sound streamed, for instance, with CX, but also for upmixing through stereo. And we also had very big response there. So we hopefully can also announce some brands introducing smart speakers with Auro in the coming
That's outstanding. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how things shape up over this coming year. You know, how many people get on the bus, right? And
Yeah,
you know, maybe we can follow up again in a little while, and you can give us an update of how things are going, and you know, point to a few devices and say, here are the ones. You know, go check them out. But that does bring us to the end of our time. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure meeting you and also hearing about the product. So thank you very much.
thank you for your time. It was an honor being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody else out there, thank you as well for watching. Remember, like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all those things, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. See ya.